Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone? Let's let some people join. I'm Aimee Raupp, and I'm coming to you live to talk about ovulation and the importance of ovulation, especially not just for getting pregnant, but for optimal hormone levels so you can feel your best. And I'm also going to share with you there's a really awesome new tool out there to track your ovulation. Let's see. So we're going to bring on, here we go. Let's see. We're going to see if I can add someone to my video. Let's give it a shot. There we go. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Amy.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. We have people rolling on, super psyched. So I was telling them that we're going to talk about the importance of ovulation, whether or not you're trying to get pregnant, and those hormones. And I want to why don't you introduce yourself? So tell us a little bit about you and Uva life, and we'll get into all the goodies.
Sure. So a little about myself. I have a PhD in biomedical sciences from Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City. But before that, I actually come from industry. So I was a data scientist at Roche for a few years, and then a researcher at Bristol Myers Squibb prior to that. So I love biology and I love large sets of data. So
Amazing.
Anything in that set is perfect for me. So a little about UVA. What we've built is an at-home test that monitors two hormones, luteinizing hormone and progesterone. I'm sure we'll talk about the importance of those in a little bit. But we track them quantitatively and over time. Okay. So a woman uses our test every day for 15 days, and then we track those hormone levels every day to learn her personal fertility profile. So we don't compare her to some standard threshold or that perfect woman who we all know doesn't exist. We're all perfect in our own way, and UVA embraces that.
And tell us why you designed UVA. Like, what is your passion behind it? I think that's important for everyone to hear.
Sure. So I had a really tough time conceiving my son. We expected it to be difficult because we were both in our 30s, and I've never had regular cycles my entire life. On top of that, I've been diagnosed with celiac disease, and infertility has always been thought to be affiliated with that. So me and my husband had a really tough conversation early on that if we didn't conceive naturally, then we didn't want to go the invasive route. Mm-hmm. It was actually easier for me to make peace with possibly never being a mother than it was to go through a potential miscarriage or a failed cycle.
Yeah.
18 months later, I luckily conceived my son, but those 18 months were the most devastating months of my life. And I'm sure a lot of women who have logged in
can relate.
Understand that. So I did everything right. I peed on a stick every morning. I took my body temperature at 4:30 a.m. every day. And I used every fertility tracking app that was available. And what was so frustrating was that after 18 months of collecting all this data, I'm a data person. I had all these numbers in my hand. I really was no smarter than I was on day one.
Yeah.
All I learned was that I hit irregular cycles.
Right.
So I started trying to hack these tools, like all these ovulation kits and apps that were designed for the perfect woman. I tried to hack them for myself, and I couldn't. They were literally designed for a woman with 28-day cycles. So the biologist in me came out, and I was like, let's figure out a way to measure these hormones at home, because that's what dictates our reproductive systems.
Yeah.
And that's where UVA was born.
Amazing. And so, let's get into the difference between UVA and like the ovulation predictor kits at home.
Sure.
What are you measuring versus what they're measuring, and why is that significant?
Sure. So UVA is the only test that measures both LH and progesterone at home in a single unit. You can buy multiple products to track both these hormones individually, but you can't do them in unison. So that's the first differentiator. The second is we're completely personalized. So we track these hormones, we factor in what your personal baseline hormone level is, and then we detect fluctuations in your hormones by comparing to that. So how can we actually do that? This is a third differentiator. We're quantitative.
Yeah.
So
tell us what quantitative means, because there's a lot of non-sciencey out there.
Sure. Sure. So currently, like if you look at any ovulation predictor kit, they're threshold based. So you have to hit a certain threshold, then you get a positive result.
So like LH over a 9 or something like that, right?
Yes. So whatever their threshold is, you have to have a hormone level above that.
Yeah.
So
that's how like the OPKs work. They're just detecting a rise in LH, and
Correct.
same thing with the progesterone kits. It's usually over a 3, I think, or a 5, right?
Over
That
a 5
progesterone,
typically.
and then there's an indicator. Okay, you ovulated because progesterone doesn't, but we don't know how high progesterone went, right? Or
Exactly.
how high LH went. Okay.
Exactly. So the problem though is if you have irregular hormone levels or irregular cycles, you may never reach those thresholds, or you
Yes.
may be consistently above those thresholds.
Mm-hmm.
So for
That's those
me,
girls that always get the peak fertility but never actually see the actual one,
right,
or like, yeah, people
exactly,
with high circulating levels of LH, or maybe their
exactly.
LH doesn't jump the way it should, but they are actually ovulating, right? Okay.
So that's me. I never
Mm-hmm.
got a positive on a clear blue. I'm like, how can I go like 16 months and not ovulate? That's not right.
Mm-mm.
Now after UVA,
Especially
I
if you were
real
getting periods. I knew you had long
exactly.
cycles. We talked about your cycles, but
Hmm.
you were still, if you get a period, chances are 14 days prior you ovulated, but that
Right.
was never picking it up. Correct.
It was never picking it up. So with UVA, I found out my LH surge is actually quite low,
Yeah.
but I do ovulate. So
And I'm sure
that's
a
where
lot of girls on here can relate to that, right? Where they get so, this is one of the things I hear, like, which kits are the best? I get so frustrated. How do I know, like, why is it not working for me?
yeah.
Um, and yeah, so the OVA really solves for a lot of those
Yeah.
issues.
So we really want to embrace your individuality, and we built this tool for the irregular woman because we consider
Mm-hmm.
her to be the new perfect.
Yes.
So what we like, so what I was saying is
I like that. The new perfect. I like that.
we were defining what quantitative means, and what that is we're actually getting the hormone measurement.
Yes.
So by capturing your baseline levels, we figure out what your low level, your baseline, so your lowest level of those hormones are for this cycle. And then
Mm-hmm.
when your hormone levels start to surpass that baseline, we can start tracking that and seeing when your surge actually happens.
Yes.
Um, and then we have a whole machine learning algorithm on the back end that gets smarter with every use.
Right.
So
And so
there's a
tell
lot
us
going on.
how, because if you guys want to check out the product, go to aimeeraupp.com/OOVA, OOVA, and you can check out the product. Tell us, because I think this is the number one question I'm going to get, like, why is it so expensive?
Sure,
And I don't
yeah.
think it's that expensive, but I know girls are going to say, I normally pay $15 for my ovulation sticks. Why is this, 200? So
Yeah,
explain that to us.
sure. So the if you're going to do self-care where you're
Mm-hmm.
monitoring your hormones at home, it's going to cost $200. And it's because we're measuring two hormones and we're learning your cycle with every data point that you enter. So whether that's subjective information that you're capturing through our daily logs or you're doing quantitative hormone measurements, we're learning every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the great thing is, and we've worked with clinicians throughout our entire product development because
Right.
what we wanted was if a woman was to go to her doctor with UVA data, they didn't just flip through the data and then put it to the side
Right.
and then start from their own protocol. We wanted them to use UVA as a stepping stone for the next step. So you can literally take your UVA reports, take that to your doctor, and they'll know what to do next. And the
Yes.
reason is because now if you haven't had a progesterone surge in a few months, that means you might have low reserve, you're not releasing eggs regularly, something's wrong there. So let's evaluate that before we just jump into IVF or jump
Yes.
into an IUI. Because honestly, if you're not releasing eggs, IUI is probably not going to work for you anyway. And you're going to
And
waste a
then
ton
I
of
think
money.
this is important to share too, that you guys weren't planning to launch right now, but then
No, we
COVID
weren't.
happened and you have a lot of relationships with fertility doctors, and they basically called you and said, we need your product now because I
Yeah,
can't get girls into the clinic. This is how reliable this information is. It's basically like your reproductive endocrinologist would be monitoring your hormones and
yeah,
planning accordingly, or telling you when to time intercourse, right? So
that's
this is
exactly it.
basically taking the fertility clinic home with you
Yep.
for $200 a month. Or there's the other option too, which I'll let you share all that.
Sure. So the $200 an option is basically you doing this at home.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want your doctor to be involved, that's $399 a
Yeah.
month. And the reason here it's so expensive because your doctor is getting real-time hormone measurements.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Every time you provide a urine sample and a test strip, your doctor is seeing the hormone measurements
Mm-hmm.
in their dashboard. So whether they're remote or they're physically in a clinic, they're able to access it anywhere that they want. So now they can call you on specific days to do certain things, such as time your intercourse, or hey, I need you to come in for a certain transfer or whatever,
Right.
what have you. They can
Right.
actually tailor their care based off of the UVA results. So
And do that care virtually too,
yeah,
which I think is really important, especially even now. And so I can be a clinician for UVA, right? So my
correct.
girls could use this, register under me, and then I can monitor even as their acupuncturist and herbalist, and adjust their care based on what I see going on hormonally as well.
Exactly. I think this is going to be so interesting to see how you're able to actually monitor, I guess, like massage her hair according to their actual hormone levels, because this is
Yeah.
just something that's never been done before.
It's
And
amazing.
we know that the hormones are critical to our entire cycle. So it's,
Yeah, and so tell me too of like, because I this is something when we had our private conversation that I thought was really important for everybody to understand too, is that we're not peeing on a stick, then taking a picture, then emailing it to someone at UVA who then reads it based on how good our camera is or the lighting, right? So
no,
tell
it's
us what
super
you
easy.
get with this UVA
Sure.
purchase. Yeah.
Sure. So there's several things you get in the box. You get a countertop holder that looks like
Mm-hmm.
this. Keep in mind everything is white because we did do an early release of the product.
Yeah, she's stuck on the branding a bit. I told her the branding is perfect. But this was, to
Well,
get it out to you guys because of this environment that we're in
yeah,
and we're limiting our doctor's visits. Yeah.
exactly. You get this handle to increase your lever arm to provide a sample, and there's an eject button so you never have to interact with the sample itself. And then you get this box with a month's supply of disposable cartridges.
Right.
So I'm going to show you one of the cartridges. They're individually sealed. You take one out. This is what it looks like. So you would basically click this onto your handle. You can provide a sample either midstream, if you prefer, or as a dip test. So if you want to
Right.
pee in a cup and then dip it in there, whatever you prefer. You basically provide the urine sample here. Now, this product works alongside an iOS app. Currently, we're only available on iPhone. We're working on Android. Hopefully, in the next few months,
I
we'll have
just
that ready.
downloaded the app. I like it. It's very
Yeah.
pretty. And I like how it asks like individualized questions a bit too, like your weight and are you trying to conceive and how, all the things. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really important that you fill out that registration form as accurately as possible because that's what's going to dictate how you use UVA. Our algorithm will walk you through everything.
Yeah.
So thank you for saying this. When you register, we actually take out all the guesswork of the process.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to think, okay, my cycle is 28 days, so I should use a strip on day 11, day 10, day 7. You don't know.
Yeah.
UVA removes all that guesswork. So we'll
Yeah.
tell you when your scanning window actually opens up.
My window
So
opens up today, and I'm hoping mine arrives today so I can
it
start testing.
should.
I think it should arrive today. I got the notice that it was shipping, so today or tomorrow, and that's okay.
Great.
I'm excited to learn because I'm cycle day 8, I think now, or no, I'm cycle day 10 now. Yeah, I'm cycle day 10.
Yeah, so you should be really great.
Yeah.
So when you provide the urine sample, you basically start the timer on the app. It goes on for 10 minutes. When the timer goes off, it's going to open up the camera directly on your smartphone. So if you look at this.
Okay, so you pee on the stick, you set the time, you tell the app, I just peed on the stick. It sets the timer automatically. Okay.
Correct. And then once the timer goes off, the camera on your phone opens up directly. So there's no attachment, there's no like dongle or anything you have to put on.
Yeah.
And then you would basically align this to the outline that you see in the app. It's very similar to doing a mobile deposit.
Right.
There'll be a little purple box. You put it around this QR code. And when it turns green, a scan goes through. So you're not taking a picture. You're not doing anything. You literally scan this. And then within seconds, you're taken to your results screen. So we do all the analytics for you. You're not having to think, is my line darker, lighter? Is it present? None of that. We do all of it for you.
And then do they get the actual numbers? No, they're just going to get notification of like the significant difference in the rise, right?
Right. So we actually take all those numbers and we contextualize it into a result that you will understand. So is it low, high, peak ovulation? Have you released an egg this cycle? How many days until ovulation? Right. What have you? But at the end of your cycle, you are provided with a report that will show you what your trends look like. And that's
so like a BBT kind of report? Will it be like a graph? Or
it's a graph. It's a graph, yeah. And then we dive into specifics about your cycle. So like, was your ovulation period, your fertile window, super long? Was it really narrow? Was it really short? Did it happen very quickly? We dive into a lot of specifics about your curve. So you really walk out of our platform more educated about your cycle. So if you have to go to a doctor, you could have a much more informed conversation.
And then if you have the clinician level, the $400 a month, right? Is it 400?
Yeah, it's
then like I would get the exact number of LH,
correct,
like a 9 or a 30, right? And the exact progesterone and that type of thing. And then so someone just asked a question, Rabia asked, how about if your cycles are very irregular? So I think you can answer this because you were that girl. So this speaks right to you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's me. I mean, so if you should have an idea of how long your cycle is. Now, if you don't, you put your best guess in on average, what you think it is, and then we will learn after that. So every cycle we get smarter. So let's say you put in 28 days. And that's like on average what your cycle is. But this month it ends up being 35 days. We're going to figure out, okay, her surge happened way later. We need to have her start scanning much later. And so next month, you'll actually be able to, we'll adjust our algorithm accordingly to tell you what to do. So we
Yeah.
don't just lump you into whatever you fill in a registration. That's just our starting point.
Yeah. And now, is an 18-day cycle normal in order to conceive? 18 is a bit short. So I think maybe you meant to type in 28. But yeah, 18 is a bit short. That means you're ovulating on like cycle day 6 or something like that. So, and that's another question too that comes up for me. Sometimes girls will have me look at, and we talked about this privately too. Girls will have me look at their BBTs. And recently someone was like, my luteal phase is getting longer.
Right.
It's 17 days. And now I know from, all of my experience and my research and my work that that's kind of impossible. Like a luteal phase really shouldn't be longer than about 14. Maybe we'll get a 15-day cycle. So I said, show me the BBT. And she's got, a couple spikes in there, what I call an inefficient ovulation, basically. That's I don't know if that's a real term, but that's what I call it clinically. And it's like the body's trying. So that's like the LH is trying. You see the BBT go up a little bit and she's getting a positive. She had stopped using the predictor kits because they weren't working for her, but she's seeing cervical mucus. So she's seeing all the signs, right? But I looked at the chart and I said, I actually think you ovulated on 16, not 14, so 2 days. And then the luteal phase is actually the 14 or 15.
Yep.
But so you guys, how would your UVA handle that case?
So this is great because now so the one gap that was missing from your whole data set was the hormone levels, because that would have been the nail in the coffin. Like, okay, this is exactly what's happening.
Because I'm guessing too. Like, what I always do is I just subtract 14 and I say, this is when you ovulated. It has to be. Might not make sense on the chart, but that's when it has to have happened, But yeah,
you're deducting,
it's really
basically
nice to have the data. Yeah.
So we get that objective hormone measurements, but then a woman, like say, like how to read a BBT chart and how to understand cervical mucus, she can log all of that into the app as well. So now we're marrying objective hormone measurements with these subjective traits that you're very keen on understanding. So now when you're evaluating your hormone measurements, you can really understand what's going on with your cycle.
Like, I see CM 4 days before I actually ovulate versus I see CM 2 days even after I ovulate.
Exactly.
Everybody's different, right? Because you can have cervical mucus for 7 days and it be totally normal. You could have it for 2 days and it be totally normal. So,
exactly. So now you would learn exactly what's going on with her cycle. So now you can also personalize her care even more.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And then another question came up for me just a second ago about that conversation. It'll come back to me, but there's another question in here. Do you feel that eggs can be overripe? I mean, this is what I wanted to ask you before I get to that. Who's reading the data? Like, who's taking that subjective and objective analysis? Like, who are these people and what are they trained to do? And
so that's our algorithm. So we've literally worked with some of the top clinicians in endocrinology, reproductive endocrinology, OBGYN to build our algorithm and ensure that everything makes sense. So we've tested the bejeebers out of this thing. Like we've tested on so many data sets and we've built our own. We've had a lot of people try to troubleshoot this thing, and so far it's come out on top. Like we've been pretty accurate with all of our algorithms, with all of our predictions. Now, more data we get, the smarter it's gonna get. Yeah. So it's just getting more and more powered every day. We have a lot of women using it already, and they've been getting very useful information. The feedback that we're getting.
And so then I'm going to go back to that overripe question. Do you think eggs could be overripe? I mean, if there's a super long follicular phase, I might be concerned about the quality of that egg for certain, but I also think that you can have a dormant early on follicular phase and then estrogen and everything starts to pick up. So this overripeness, I think not necessarily. I think it would depend case by case. I'm not sure if you have an opinion on that, Aimee.
I think it would. So like in this case, the egg still wouldn't have been released from the ovary, right? So I think what would have ended up happening is you would have seen a longer estrogen surge, and then the LH surge would probably still be relatively normal because you would still have to see that spike.
That's it. That's exactly it. So the LH still has to happen. The ovulation still has to happen, basically. So I don't know that necessarily that egg, because I've had girls, especially PCOS, and you might have fallen into this case too, where, they ovulated on cycle day 30 and they got pregnant with a healthy child, so it's just more it was catching the window versus the follicular phase being too long or the egg being overripe.
Yeah, I think every case is going to be different,
Yeah,
but
and that's this like imperfect is the new perfect. Is that
right.
how did you
Yeah.
say it? Yeah.
Yeah, the
Um,
imperfect is the new perfect. Exactly.
so there was another question. Let's see. Do you have to order an entirely new kit every month or just the cartridges?
So we would be sending you just the refill kit cartridges. You don't need the new handle and holder, unless if you want it. I mean, you
And
can
then
let us
that's
know.
still 200 a month though.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
if you're working with a clinician, it's still the same price because we still need the data to go
The
into the
data.
doctor's stuff.
Right.
But if you're doing self-care, then the refill kits are going to be 170 to
Okay. So you
169.
save $30. Okay, that's
Mm-hmm.
cool. And
And
then
just
here's
give us some time. We're going to be having a subscription model and everything that's going to be
yeah, that's
rolling
what I
out. Just
figured. They really
it's
threw this together last minute. No, I mean, not the data, not the research,
but
not
making
all
the
the back
site
end stuff,
live.
but more like the consumer. The A to B
Yeah.
has been thrown together somewhat, or B to C, I guess you would call it, right? Business
Yeah.
to consumer, has been thrown together because of the times, but their reliability and the data and the functionality has all been really tested. And so now they're just trying to figure out the best way to serve the consumers. If you always have a 28-day cycle and you have ovulation signs at 13, 14 and have used OPKs and they were accurate, what could this tell me in regards to fertility when trying to conceive?
So there's several things. One, are you sure that you release an egg that cycle? You may not. I mean, some women have a 28-day cycle where they're having a period every 28 days.
Yeah.
However, they're not releasing an egg. And this especially happens as a woman ages, unfortunately. We
Yeah.
still have to go through the pain of a period, but you're not actually able to get pregnant. So it's really informative for that. And now let's say you're trying to conceive and you do have this regular cycle, but you're not getting pregnant. You really want to understand, all right, is it because
Exactly.
my surge is too short? Is it because my surge is too wide? Am I releasing quality eggs? Like there's a lot of things that you can get from the UVA data. And if you're still unsuccessful, at least you're going to your doctor armed with data that they will trust and move
Yeah.
forward with, rather than just notebooks and folders of pictures
What
and
type
body
of
pictures.
information does UVA provide that you think correlates to egg quality, or is there any?
It's more about confirming that an egg was released, right? So
Gotcha.
now if your progesterone level stays up, then you know that you release an egg this cycle and
Yeah.
it'll fall back down if you don't conceive, right? So I wouldn't say egg quality because you do need certain other hormones in here, which we hope to add in the future.
Yeah. Oh, so you'll look at like FSH or could you do AMH via urine?
We're
No.
evaluating.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
evaluating it.
Yeah.
It's from the research I've seen, it's much better correlated in blood than it is in
Yeah.
urine. So
Agreed.
I don't know if we want to
Let's
go
see
that
if you
route.
can. Yeah. Because that seems, I mean, we talked about too, because I had said, what about those test kits that you take the picture and you email them? And you had such a great reaction. She was like, oh, no, we don't
We're
do
not
that.
doing that.
Too many variables. Like
Yeah.
she's such a scientist where she was like, absolutely not that. Way too many variables into the mix to get accurate results. And I see that a lot too with, the strip test where it's like, oh, is the line darker today?
Yeah.
Is it not darker? That's insanity making. I'm to the point in my career, I've been practicing 15 years, 16 years helping women conceive. I don't always recommend BBTs anymore, and I don't always recommend OPKs anymore because the insanity making, you know what I mean? And I love every one of my women. I'm not saying anybody's insane, but that it just really starts to mess with your brain.
Oh yeah. I remember going through this and it was like a second full-time job that I cared more about than my actual job. Because it was like, okay, this is my routine. Every morning I need to do this, 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 this.
Yeah.
Log this data. All right, now when I get on the train, I'm going to evaluate what my data look like. And honestly, there was nothing to evaluate. There was nothing that I was learning, but it was my obsession every morning. And I think obsession is more keen than insanity because
obsession is
you're just constantly thinking about it.
And it's all you think about. And I do think the BBT does that to you too, where it's like, what's my temp going to be today? You know what I mean? And not thinking about, oh, but if you had spicy food for dinner last night, it actually might throw off your BBT in the morning. If you had an extra glass of wine, guess what? Wine really throws off the BBT. So it does become this, it's very, obsessive, and it starts to rule your life.
Yeah.
And so this takes the guesswork out of it, which is really nice for women, because even if, say we were under extreme stress around trying to conceive, I don't know, because scientifically too, or physiologically, it might, that stress may delay ovulation and it may impact LH. So you're not going to see that same rise, right?
100%. And
at some point, you guys should do cortisol levels.
I know.
That's what I think you should
something
do.
We're thinking about too. So we do have other things that you can track in the app, like your stress levels, your mood, your energy, and all of that can get fed into our algorithm to kind of see if stress is having an impact.
Hmm.
But yeah, I know cortisol would be great. You're talking like my language right now.
Yeah, because it's such a good tracker, because we talked about this on our call too. I'll use the Dutch test a lot with my
Yeah,
clients if I'm trying to figure out these like missing pieces, like why does she have a regular cycle? What's going on? Why is she still
sure.
not getting pregnant? And you'll see that the cortisol levels are extremely, just imbalanced, we'll say. Some can be
Absolutely.
high, some can be low, it just depends. And there is that physiological fact that if the body doesn't feel safe, it will not either ovulate or it will not conceive, right? It
Right.
will not set up the right parameters for that. And safety could be high stress levels that is basically just like, an intense job or
Yep.
intensely trying to conceive, so it
Yep.
doesn't have to be that the lion is chasing you through the woods, but this fight or flight response really kicks off, and that can really trigger hormonal imbalances as well,
Absolutely.
and the inability to conceive. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that would be a good measurement at some point. But so this is basically like the timed intercourse kind of piece. That's what you're really helping with.
It's that, and then also, like I don't want to just leave it at that because that just puts
Yes.
us into the ovulation predictor kit category, and we're a lot more than that. So, yes, we can help you figure out when you should try to conceive, but we also confirm that you released an egg. And I think
Yes, which
as
is
you're,
really important to know.
yeah, you need to know why you didn't conceive this cycle. Is it because
Hmm.
I missed my window, or is it because I didn't release an egg?
Yeah.
And I think that,
And
like,
looking at your data, because I have different data that I've seen, but I'm curious with the more recent data that you've looked at, how often is a woman not releasing an egg?
so I measured myself for 2.5 months. I didn't release an egg one cycle. So that's one data
And
point
how
right
old are
there.
you?
I'm 30. Oh my God, I'm gonna be 36 in 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so
So,
I'm
because I've heard
35.
anovulatory cycles, like every woman has at least one a year, is what I've
Yeah.
heard data.
Oh, I
Maybe
am
one to
much more.
two, and you gotta have normal cycles, but you're just skipping an ovulation at
So
least once a year.
I have
Yeah.
completely irregular cycles.
Yes.
So I'm not a good source of that to speak to that point. But we have heard of a lot of women that are getting lower progesterone levels because they're not releasing it.
And
I
so the
think
progesterone, yeah.
no. So I
Go
think
ahead.
it's just a lot more common than the stat you just said. If you're above 30,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you're normal, then I think or if you're much younger, I think you're right. Maybe one to two. Two might be a lot actually if you're
Yeah.
younger
Yeah.
than 30.
So one anovulatory. I've heard under 35. So 35 and under,
Yeah.
it's like one anovulatory a year, you can kind of assume.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, it probably gets a little more irregular. The percentage points I think are, small, maybe
Hmm.
a 10% jump, you know what I mean? 35,
But there's
37.
so many factors. I mean, if you have irregular cycles, then it's difficult to even
Yeah,
say to
exactly.
fit into that
Exactly. Or
statistic.
if you have a high stress period, it doesn't really matter your age, you're going to
Exactly.
maybe have an ovulatory cycle, right? I think
Yeah.
the two most important things for ovulation are enough calories
Yep.
and safety, right? So you could have an off month where you're super stressed and you're not eating enough. Guess what? You're not going to ovulate, and you could still be 28 or you could be 38,
Yep.
right? So I think that's really where I come in with a lot of the work I do is the lifestyle support and the
Sure.
diet and the supplements and all the things that we can support basically the body to have all the goods it needs to actually carry out a healthy ovulation, which then will trigger a healthy
That's
progesterone level,
that's
right?
so important because I remember when I was going through my journey, I was like, okay, I'm going to get healthy now. And you Google all these things
I
that
know
you should
what
be
is
doing.
healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you adopt all these new like habits that may not even be good for you. So having like a sane mind telling you like, okay, this is what you need to do to
Yeah.
regulate your cycle or regulate your hormones to get pregnant or give you the best chance is
Good.
critical.
I know. Thank you. Someone asked, do you ship to the UK?
Not yet. Hopefully
Not
by
yet.
the end of the year. We're
Okay.
working on it.
Okay.
We've had a lot of
Um,
requests.
yeah, good, good. Will it also be available in Europe? So that's the same question.
Hmm.
What marks that you have ovulated? All clinics I've gone to spend all the time pushing IUI or IVF
Yeah.
versus any cycle tracking. Yes, so this is a good question.
Yeah. So let me answer the first part. So we know
Yeah,
that you've ovulated by, well, first of all, we're measuring the two hormones, right?
yeah.
Luteinizing hormone and progesterone quantitatively. So we can tell you when you're about to, or your most fertile window is by tracking your LH surge.
Hmm.
And we do that by comparing to your personal
Yeah.
baseline levels, right? So we're
But
not
do you need to use the
thresholded.
test for one whole month before you
You
actually
don't.
know? Okay.
So we only use it for 15, we have you only
Right.
using it for 15 days in a cycle anyway. We just move those 15 days according to the data
Gotcha.
that we capture on your cycle length. So now you can, we'll be able to tell you when your most fertile days are, and then we'll confirm whether you released an egg or not by measuring your progesterone levels.
Yep.
So that answers the first part of the question. Now, the second part was the fertility clinic.
Yeah.
So what Aimee actually started off the call with was that we've gotten a lot of inbound interest from doctors. And it's because of the validity of the data that we're capturing. So what we've gotten a lot of interest for is not only remote tracking of hormones, but also just coming in with a lot of information so you know what to track, what to do next.
Yeah.
Right. So if let's say you don't really, your progesterone levels aren't going up month after month for maybe 2 or 3 months, and you go to your fertility doctor, they're going to know that IUI is probably not going to work for you. And we should either look into donation or we should go into IVF.
Yeah.
So you save yourself those 2, 3 IUI cycles that you would have to go through that would be unsuccessful anyway.
Right.
So I think it's really critical to have that UVA report to take to your doctor.
And then to see exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
And then someone wants to know too, how did it help you? Did you develop this after, right? Or before? Yeah.
I wish I had UVA when I was trying to get pregnant. But you know what it was? Like, I had so much trouble getting pregnant. It fueled all of the gaps that I found in the current process. And that's what went into UVA.
Yeah. So she gave birth to something else on the way to her child, which is something we talk about a lot in my community, is like the emotional aspect. Like, what else are you giving birth to? Where are you creating? And you created all of this en route to baby. Okay, all this information is so helpful. Is this appropriate for endometriosis patients? I would think 100%, right? As long as you're an ovulating woman or a woman actively trying to conceive. But even if you're not trying to conceive, ovulation is just so important to bodily function across the board. And progesterone levels are super important too. And that's one of the biggest things that decreases as a woman ages is the progesterone. And that's typically because what you're saying is they're anovulatory cycles. And so if we regulate ovulation in a woman who's even in her 40s and still menstruating, she just feels better overall.
Absolutely. I think your next interview or person you're doing Instagram Live with is talking about the 5th vital sign.
Oh, yeah.
This is so critical for that. Like, I can't vouch for that any more than you just did.
Yeah, it's so critical to just see. I mean, because some people just think, oh, I don't, it's just like going on the pill. Like, oh, I don't need to ovulate because I'm not trying to have a baby. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many other reasons why you should be ovulating. There's so many other reasons why estrogen should be where it's at. LH should surge. Progesterone should be where it's at. It's very, very important to really, every aspect of a female physiology. My last cycle was 50 days and I thought I was pregnant, but I am not. How will I track my ovulation in this cycle? My normal period is 30 to 37.
Well, I mean, so you would basically enter that into your registration. So like what your normal period cycle is 30 to 37 days. We have a drop down. You select whatever value you think is best for you.
Yeah.
And then we start tracking.
And you'll catch the window because those 2 weeks, you'll catch it. Yeah.
We'll catch it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you end up so we ask you to log your period like religiously in the app because that's really what dictates our algorithm pretty heavily. You can we would adjust the window accordingly. So let's say your typical cycle is 30 to 37 days. That's still a pretty wide window that you're providing me with.
Yeah.
If it goes from 30 to 35, we're going to adjust our scanning window accordingly because we now know what's going on and we learn every cycle. So it's okay if it shifts month to month. Not every woman has a typical 28-day cycle to the date every month. Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you guys want more information, again, aimeeraupp.com/OOVA, OOVA. And we're registering me as a clinician now too. So you guys could do the clinician account or the, what would we call it? Just the at-home services for yourself, right? And maybe that's a great place to start for a lot of people. And then they see if they want the clinician involvement or if they need it. And then do they need to have a doctor registered when they register under the clinician account? Like, do they have to reach out to their RE to see if they're involved? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we're actively bringing clinicians on every day. So if your doctor is interested in using UVA, just put them in touch with us. They can email me directly, Aimee@uva.life. So AMY@OOVA.life. And I'll be happy to get them on board.
I love it. All right, let's see. Any other questions, guys? This was so active. Lots of great questions. Let me just see. Okay, let's see. If you ovulate on day 14, let's say, do you always get your period 14 days later, or can that vary?
That can totally vary. That can 100% vary. If you know you ovulate on day 14, I think you're super lucky because you know that. But that changes for a lot of women.
Yeah, that changes. I would just say that luteal phase isn't typically very longer
Hmm.
than, 14, 15, 16. So it's
Yeah.
more about like what I always do in the clinic is a woman will say to me, I always ovulate on 14, but this month I had a 36-day cycle. And, I don't have all the data. Obviously, I don't have all your numbers. And so I typically say, I think that's impossible. And I subtract 36 minus 14 and say, I actually think you must have ovulated closer to 22. So maybe that's what I see a lot clinically is the woman gets that one surge and then she stops testing and she stops trying and she
Hmm.
completely misses the window, right? So you guys would
Yep.
take all that guesswork out.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the beauty of this. We want to take out all the guesswork so you're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
objective measurements and know exactly what's happening with your cycle. You
Yeah.
as the clinician and the patient as well. So you guys can have an
Yes.
informed conversation together.
Yeah. And then someone asked, would I review it for the first month? Yeah, you can put me as your clinician, Jamie. Absolutely. If I get minor ovulation pain, what could my body be telling me? I mean, that can be normal. The middle schmerz
Could
is
be.
pretty normal.
Yep.
Sometimes, I think it's a sign too, like maybe the ovary is working a little harder. It depends on the intensity of the pain. But minor pain is fairly normal. If my period is like brown spots, does it mean I didn't ovulate last month? Again, we'd have to guess, but it doesn't tell us. There's like I think about it automatically, like the uterine lining didn't grow
Yeah.
the way it should have, so
Hmm.
estrogen was low, and perhaps then it didn't shed the way it should have, so I don't think the whole thing kicked into gear. So perhaps you didn't ovulate, and that's usually what I'll say to a woman. She's like, well, every other cycle I'm having this like weird brown spotting, and I usually say, well, then I think you're actually not ovulating on those cycles and
I
your
think it'd
body's
be interesting to
shedding.
see how her progesterone
But
levels
that's it.
correlate with
So
that.
we would really know. And that's usually the first thing I do is like I actually have them either BBT or just get a 6-day DPO
Hmm.
progesterone when we can try to figure that out. But we really just pay attention to signs and try to put the pieces
Yeah.
together. This again takes that guesswork right out. And I think
Yep.
for even if they were just doing the at home, the $200 or the $400 a month, it's so worth it personally, because I see women too, they spend a ton of money on those clear
I
blue
know.
digitals. I mean,
I know.
they spend a lot of money on those.
I know.
um what number of progesterone level says you ovulated? So I mean, it has to go above like, well, like a 3 or a 5, but then it's supposed to climb and
Hmm.
continue to climb, and then stay up. That's then the
Exactly.
key that we know it definitely happened.
Yep. And I would also caveat that with it also has to go up a certain percentage above your whatever your baseline levels are. So
Yeah,
we're finding that a lot of women
that's
actually
it.
do have baseline progesterone levels in during their follicular phase,
Yeah, and
which
well, and they should.
they
Progesterone's
should, right?
there. It's there. It's just low.
Right,
Estrogen's a lot higher, but progesterone is important all month long.
right.
And then we
So
want to see that jump. Yeah.
so what's great is because it's all in one test, we're getting capturing a lot of your progesterone baseline during your follicular phase. So when you
That's
get to your luteal phase, we can actually detect that surge that happens for
yes.
progesterone levels and make sure it's staying up.
Yes. Now this is a big question. If I don't have the iPhone, can I get the
Oh,
results?
we're no, not right now. So it really works with scanning. That's like the
Yeah,
whole
the whole
process. So you
thing.
don't have to think about this. You don't have to try to interpret it yourself. We're really working hard to get that Android out. Give us a few months. I'm sorry. Like I
Yeah,
really wish we could have the Android
I know.
available today.
Or find someone who has an iPhone that you can put the app on. Maybe like
Yeah,
my husband is an Android and I'm an iPhone, so we
yeah.
would,
You
that's how
need
we
one
would.
in the family.
Yes, exactly. We just need one iPhone in the family. What about if you had, could you do it with like an iPad? Because you could put the device,
It's not
is it
available
best
through
on the phone?
iPad yet. It's
Okay.
best on the phone. So
Okay.
cameras are slightly
The
different.
thing. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're working on. We're looking at doing an iPad version, but as of right now, it's only iPhone.
Okay. Okay, guys. So aimeeraupp.com/uva, OOVA, and I'm getting my set hopefully today. So I'm gonna be using it, and I'll be keeping you guys in the loop of my experience. And so I'm excited about that, and I'm excited to see all the back end and the data and all those things. And let's see, is it FSA eligible? I think that's a great
Yes,
question, and I think it is,
it
right?
is. It
It
is.
is
Yeah.
FSA eligible. So
So
that's a
you would.
great point. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's just like with acupuncture, where it's like, I'm not cheap to see, but if you're FSA, that's great. So it's tax-free
Yeah.
money. You put it aside. Is all ovulation tracker strips accurate?
I
again, that's kind of what we touched upon in the beginning. What the biggest differentiation, I think, with the UVA is we're not just looking at a threshold like, oh, your LH went above a 10 versus what's the differential. And that is really telling us then ovulation happened and then what progesterone is doing. So
Correct.
ovulation strips are only looking at one hormone, not both.
Yep. Well, I want to caveat that with like
Yeah.
Clear Blue looks at estrogen and LH,
Yeah,
but
not
they're really
yeah.
right. They're only focusing on the fertile window. They're not looking at your whole fertility cycle, and that's what UVA's really focusing on.
Yeah. If your baseline body temp is rising after ovulation, does this mean your progesterone levels are raising normally? Typically, that's what we would hope the BBT would be indicating. I think again, UVA's taking out the guesswork and saying like, yeah, but this is the percentage that you went up and that you stayed up. But typically, yeah, if we see that real biphasic curve in a BBT, we're pretty confident that you ovulated and you stayed in that luteal phase. But again, do we know that 100%? Not necessarily unless we have the hormones.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Aimee, this was so great and so much interaction, guys. I love it. So again, if you want more information, go to aimeeraupp.com/UVA. And then I am registered as a clinician now too. So you guys can go and take advantage of that if you want me to be your clinician. And I'll jump into learning the back end real fast. I know you gave me the information. I just have to go and log into the portal. Sure. And I'm going to test it out with my own self first and learn. So hopefully this month I'll learn and I'll keep you guys posted.
Great. Well, thank
okay,
you guys
Aimee,
so
thank
much.
you so much. And we'll have you on again soon when you guys are like full on up and running, and then we'll do
Sure.
it again. That way we can help promote it again. Because I mean, I know it's costly initially for girls to think about, but I think the amount of relief that it provides and certainty is priceless, right? So that's the point where it's worth it. And then even the Fsa eligibility is really a great piece as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We just want to empower as many women as we can. And if we
Yes,
can help you achieve your
that's
fertility goal in the process.
Yeah,
great.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Aimee. Okay,
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.